Jasmine Williams sat at the old upright piano outside her apartment building, her fingers dancing across the worn keys as the evening sun cast long shadows on the cracked sidewalk. At just 12 years old, her slender frame seemed too small for the powerful music she created. The piano, rescued by her mother from a church clearance sale, had become her escape from the harsh realities of life in the West Side neighborhood. 6 months ago, Jasmine's father had collapsed at his construction job. The heart attack took him instantly, leaving no time for goodbyes. Since then, her mother had been working double shifts at the hospital cafeteria and cleaning offices at night, but even those long hours weren't enough to keep up with rent, utilities, and food for Jasmine and her 2 younger siblings. The idea to play for donations came one evening when Jasmine was practicing, and an elderly neighbor had stopped to listen, eventually dropping a $5 bill into her music book. "You've got a gift, child," the woman had said. People should pay to hear that. Now every weekend, Jasmine would wheel the heavy piano out from the building's storage area, with help from Mr. Rodriguez, the superintendent who had taken a liking to her family. He'd built a small platform with wheels so the piano could be moved without damage. "Music brings life to this block," he'd told her. "We need more of that around here." Today, Jasmine wore her best outfit, a blue dress her mother had found at the thrift store. It was slightly too big, but her mother had pinned it in the back so it wouldn't slip off her shoulders. Next to the piano sat a glass jar labeled Food Fund in Jasmine's careful handwriting, decorated with musical notes drawn in marker. As she played, she thought about the frozen dinners that had become their staple, how her mother would cut her own portion in half to make sure the children had enough. Jasmine closed her eyes, channeling these feelings into the melody, a piece she had heard on a classical radio station and learned by ear after weeks of practice. People walked by, some dropping coins or small bills into the jar, others just stopping to watch in amazement. Jasmine had never had a formal lesson. The school's music program had been cut years ago, and private lessons were an unthinkable luxury. Yet somehow her fingers found the right keys, creating music that seemed impossible for someone with no training. Mrs. Chen from the corner grocery stopped to listen, grocery bags in hand. "How did you learn to play like this?" she asked during a pause. Jasmine shrugged, suddenly shy. "I just listen and try to copy it. Sometimes I watch videos on the library computers." "You have a special gift," Mrs. Chen said, placing a $10 bill in the jar, the largest donation Jasmine had ever received. "My brother teaches piano at the community center. Maybe I can talk to him." But Jasmine knew extra activities meant transportation costs and time her mother didn't have. She smiled politely and began playing again, this time a piece she had composed herself, a melody that reminded her of her father's laugh, warm and rolling like summer thunder. Across the street, a group of teenagers who usually hung around the corner store had paused their conversation to listen. One of them, a tall boy who wore a permanent scowl, nudged his friend and pointed at Jasmine. She tensed, preparing for the teasing that sometimes came her way. Instead, the boy crossed the street and stood awkwardly nearby. When she finished playing, he approached the jar and dropped in what looked like all the money from his pocket. "That was tight," he said, avoiding eye contact. "My grandma used to play before her arthritis got bad. She'd like your style." Before Jasmine could respond, he was gone, jogging back to his friends who were already moving down the block. These small moments of connection were unexpected gifts that came with the music, bridges between people who might otherwise never speak to each other. As the afternoon wore on, dark clouds gathered overhead. A few raindrops spattered on the sidewalk and pedestrians quickened their pace. Jasmine knew she should pack up. Water could damage the piano beyond their ability to repair it, but she wanted to play one more piece. She began Chopin's Raindrop Prelude, a piece she had struggled with for months. Her mother had found a tattered book of classical sheet music at a yard sale, and though Jasmine couldn't read music properly, she had painstakingly matched the notes on the page to the sounds she could produce, learning through pure persistence. The rain began to fall more steadily, but something made Jasmine continue playing. The repeated notes in the piece mimicked the sound of raindrops, creating a perfect harmony with the weather. She became lost in the music, unaware that people were stopping under umbrellas and awnings to watch. Among them was a woman in a raincoat, standing perfectly still despite the increasing downpour. Dr. Eleanor Bennett, head of the piano department at City University, had been on her way to meet a colleague when the music caught her attention. At first, she assumed it was a recording. The technical execution was too precise for a street performer. But as she approached, she saw it was a child playing with an intensity that professionals spend years developing. Jasmine reached a particularly difficult passage, one where the left and right hands play contrasting rhythms. Her brow furrowed in concentration as her small hands stretched to reach the notes. A slight mistake made her wince, but she recovered quickly, pressing on with determination. Dr. Bennett took out her phone and began recording, captivated by the girl's natural talent and emotional expression. In 20 years of teaching, she had encountered child prodigies from privileged backgrounds with access to the finest instruments and instructors. But she had never seen raw talent like this, blooming against all odds in a neighborhood where survival often took precedence over art. The rain was coming down hard now, and Mr. Rodriguez emerged from the building with a large umbrella, which he held over Jasmine and the piano. "Time to come in, little maestro," he said gently. "Your mama will be home soon and this old piano needs to stay dry." Jasmine nodded, playing the final notes of the piece before closing the piano cover. She collected the jar, surprised by how heavy it was today. Maybe they could afford fresh vegetables this week, or even chicken for Sunday dinner. Dr. Bennett approached as Mr. Rodriguez began helping Jasmine wheel the piano back toward the building entrance. "Excuse me?" she called out. That was extraordinary playing. Jasmine turned, raindrops clinging to her eyelashes. "Thank you," she said softly, clutching the jar of money to her chest. "My name is Dr. Bennett. I teach piano at the university. Would your parents be around? I'd love to speak with them." Jasmine hesitated, years of her mother's warnings about strangers making her cautious. Mr. Rodriguez stepped in. "Her mother will be home in about an hour. Maybe you could come back?" Dr. Bennett nodded, opening her purse and producing a business card. "Please give this to her. Tell her I've never heard such natural talent. I'd like to discuss possibilities for your future." Jasmine took the card carefully as if it might disappear. "What possibilities?" "Lessons, for one," Dr. Bennett said with a warm smile. "And perhaps much more. There are scholarships, programs for gifted young musicians." For the first time in months, something like hope flickered in Jasmine's chest. She thought of her mother's exhausted face, the weight of worry that seemed to press her shoulders down more each day. Would music, the one thing that had been just for joy, really be able to change things for them? As she helped wheel the piano inside, Jasmine slipped Dr. Bennett's card into her dress pocket, already imagining her mother's reaction. Tonight, instead of just bringing home money for food, she might be bringing home a future. Rain poured down outside the Williams apartment as Jasmine sat at their small kitchen table, staring at Dr. Bennett's business card. The elegant cream paper felt out of place against the chipped laminate tabletop. Her mother, Yvonne, read the card for the third time, her tired eyes wide with disbelief. "And she just stopped to listen to you play? On our old piano?" Yvonne asked, setting down the mug of instant coffee she'd been nursing since arriving home from her first job. Her uniform still smelled of hospital disinfectant. "She recorded me too," Jasmine said, emptying the day's earnings onto the table. The coins and bills formed an impressive pile, nearly $40. Mr. Rodriguez was there. He said she seemed like the real deal. Yvonne nodded slowly. Their superintendent had good judgment about people. Still, opportunities like this didn't just fall into the laps of families like theirs. Life had taught her to be cautious. "I'll call her tomorrow," she finally said, tucking the card into her wallet. "No promises, though. We can't afford lessons, scholarship or not. There's transportation, proper clothes." "I know, Mama," Jasmine said softly, helping her mother count the money. "But she said I have talent." Yvonne's expression softened as she reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Baby, I've always known that. You got your father's ear for music." The mention of her father made Jasmine's chest tighten. He used to sing while cooking Sunday breakfast, his deep voice filling their home with warmth. Now their apartment felt too quiet, even when all three children were home. "I just want to help," Jasmine whispered. "Maybe if I get really good I could earn more money playing." Her mother's eyes glistened. "You're 12, Jasmine. Your job is to be a child, not support this family." She stood up, wincing slightly at the pain in her back from hours on her feet. "Let me worry about the money. Now go finish your homework while I start dinner." Later that night, after her younger siblings were asleep, Jasmine heard her mother on the phone in the hallway, speaking in the hushed tones adults use when discussing serious matters. Yes, Dr. Bennett. Yes, that's my daughter. No formal training. I appreciate your interest, but I'm not sure how we could make it work. Jasmine pressed her ear against the bedroom door, holding her breath. Tomorrow? Well, yes, I suppose we could meet you at that time. The university? I'll have to bring her younger brother and sister. You're sure it's no trouble? That's very kind. The next afternoon, Jasmine found herself sitting at a gleaming black grand piano in a practice room at City University's music building. The space smelled of polish and paper, so different from their apartment's familiar sense of laundry detergent and whatever simple meal her mother had managed to prepare the night before. Dr. Bennett sat in a chair nearby, watching as Jasmine tentatively touched the keys, marveling at how smoothly they moved compared to their old upright. This piano is worth more than our whole building, Jasmine whispered, almost afraid to play it. Dr. Bennett smiled. Instruments are meant to be played, Jasmine. Why don't you show me what you can do? In the corner, Yvonne sat with 5-year-old Zach on her lap and 8-year-old Layla beside her, both children unusually quiet in the unfamiliar surroundings. Jasmine took a deep breath and began to play. She started with the Chopin piece from yesterday, her confidence growing as the familiar melody filled the room. The piano responded to her touch in ways their old upright never could, bringing out nuances in the music she hadn't known were possible. When she finished, Dr. Bennett was scribbling notes on a pad. Remarkable sense of phrasing, she murmured. And your hand position, who taught you that? Nobody, Jasmine admitted. I just do what feels right. Can you play something else? Perhaps something you've composed yourself? Jasmine hesitated, then nodded. She closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her father, then began to play the melody she'd created for him. It started simply like a lullaby, then grew more complex, weaving in fragments of the songs he used to sing. When she finished, the room was silent. She turned to see her mother wiping tears from her cheeks while Dr. Bennett sat motionless, her pen forgotten in her hand. That was beautiful, Dr. Bennett said finally. Truly beautiful. And you created that entirely on your own? Jasmine nodded, suddenly self-conscious. It's for my dad. He died 6 months ago. Dr. Bennett's expression softened. Music helps us express things we can't put into words. That's a gift, Jasmine. She turned to Yvonne, her tone becoming businesslike but kind. Mrs. Williams, your daughter has extraordinary natural ability. With proper training, she could develop into a serious pianist. I'd like to offer her weekly lessons at no cost as part of our community outreach program. Yvonne straightened in her chair. That's very generous, and, Dr. Bennett continued, I'd like your permission to share the video I took yesterday. I think people should hear Jasmine play. It might open up other opportunities. What kind of opportunities? Yvonne asked cautiously. Scholarships, special programs, perhaps performance opportunities that include stipends. The music world has resources for exceptional talents like Jasmine's. Yvonne looked at her daughter, who was running her fingers silently over the piano keys, clearly in love with the instrument. You really believe she's that good? I've been teaching for 20 years, Dr. Bennett said. I don't say this lightly. That evening, after getting the children ready for bed, Yvonne gave her permission. Dr. Bennett uploaded the video to her professional social media accounts, adding a brief caption about discovering an untrained prodigy playing for food money in one of the city's struggling neighborhoods. By morning, the video had been viewed 10,000 times. By the following afternoon, it had reached 100,000. Jasmine was at school when her mother called the office to have her pulled out of class. Worried something was wrong, she hurried to the front office where her mother waited, clutching her phone. Mama, what's happening? Dr. Bennett's video, Yvonne said, her voice shaky with excitement. People are watching it, Jasmine. Lots of people. And they want to help. That evening, they huddled around Yvonne's phone in their kitchen, scrolling through comments and messages. A local news station wanted to interview Jasmine. A music store offered to donate a digital piano so she could practice at home. People were asking how they could contribute to her musical education. Most overwhelming was the crowdfunding page Dr. Bennett had set up. In just 24 hours, it had raised nearly $8,000. This can't be real, Yvonne whispered, staring at the number on the screen. What does this mean, Mama? Jasmine asked. Her mother pulled her close. It means you can take those lessons without us worrying about bus fare or proper clothes. It means maybe I can cut back a few hours at work." Her voice broke. "It means people care, baby." The next day brought more surprises. The principal called Jasmine to his office, where a reporter and photographer from the city newspaper waited. They asked about her music, her father, her dreams. Jasmine answered shyly at first, then with growing confidence as they genuinely seemed to care about her story. "What do you want people to know about you?" the reporter asked. Jasmine thought for a moment. "That music isn't just something extra. Sometimes it's necessary, like food or air, and everyone should have a chance to find the thing that makes them feel alive, even if they're poor." The story ran on Sunday, featuring a photo of Jasmine at her street corner piano. By Monday, the video had been shared by several popular music pages and had reached over 1 million views. Dr. Bennett called that evening. "Jasmine, are you sitting down? The Dean of the Arts Academy saw your video. They want to offer you a full scholarship to their weekend program for gifted youth." Jasmine nearly dropped the phone. The Arts Academy was the most prestigious music school in the city, a place she'd walked past once on a school field trip, never imagining she could step inside. "Really?" she whispered. "They want me?" "They absolutely want you," Dr. Bennett confirmed. "And there's more. A piano manufacturer has offered to loan you a practice piano, a real one, not just a digital keyboard. They'll deliver and tune it for free." That night, Jasmine couldn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to her siblings' steady breathing from the bunk bed across the room. Just days ago, her biggest worry had been whether they'd have enough food for the week. Now strangers were reaching out to help, all because of music, the one thing that had kept her going after losing her father. She crept out of bed and sat by the window, looking out at the neighborhood. The same streets, the same buildings, but suddenly everything felt different. Possibility hung in the air like the notes of a song waiting to be played. The rain had stopped, and moonlight silvered the puddles on the sidewalk where her piano had stood. Tomorrow she would start a journey she hadn't dared to imagine. But tonight, in the quiet of her familiar room, Jasmine whispered a thank you to her father, certain that somehow, somewhere, he was listening. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains of the Williams apartment as a knock echoed through their home. Jasmine, already dressed for school in her cleanest jeans and a faded t-shirt, rushed to peek through the peephole. Outside stood 2 men in uniforms and a woman in a business suit holding a clipboard. "Mama," Jasmine called. "I think the piano people are here." Yvonne emerged from the bathroom, still pinning up her hair for work. She checked her watch with a frown. "They're early. I'll be late for my shift if I called your workplace yesterday," the woman said when Yvonne opened the door. "Your supervisor approved a late arrival. I hope that's okay. We didn't want Jasmine to miss this before school." Yvonne's eyebrows rose in surprise. Her supervisor rarely approved schedule changes, especially on short notice. "You must be from Steinman Pianos," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Yvonne Williams." "Lisa Connolly," the woman replied with a warm smile. "Marketing director. And yes, we've brought something special for your daughter." The 2 men wheeled in a beautiful upright piano, not brand new but well-maintained with a rich mahogany finish. It gleamed in the morning light, looking impossibly elegant against the worn carpet and second-hand furniture. "This is our education model," Lisa explained. "Designed for serious students. It's on indefinite loan to Jasmine as part of our Young Artist program." Jasmine stood frozen, afraid to touch it. "It's so beautiful," she whispered. One of the delivery men smiled. "My daughter saw your video. She's 7 and just started lessons. She made me promise to tell you she thinks you're amazing." "People keep saying that," Jasmine said quietly, running her fingers lightly over the keys. "But I'm just playing what I hear in my head." "That's what makes it special," Lisa said. "Now we'll need to tune it properly. Will tomorrow work? After school?" As the piano technicians arranged details with her mother, Jasmine played a few notes, marveling at the warm, rich sound. This piano responded differently than her old one. The keys moved more easily, the tone was fuller. It felt like upgrading from a whisper to a full voice. "We should put it here," Yvonne was saying, pointing to the corner of their small living room. "The neighbors below us are hard of hearing, so they won't mind the sound." Jasmine turned to her mother. "Can I stay home today? Please, just to practice?" Yvonne shook her head firmly. "Education first, music second." "That's the deal." "Your mother's right," Lisa added. "The best musicians are also good students. The piano will wait for you. The day crawled by. Jasmine's teachers noticed her unusual distraction, but most had seen the newspaper article or heard about the viral video. Her math teacher, Mr. Diaz, even pulled her aside after class. "My wife's a cellist with the community orchestra," he said. "She says your playing is exceptional. If you ever need help with homework to make time for practice, let me know." By the time Jasmine raced home that afternoon, word had spread through the building. Neighbors stopped her in the hallway and elevator to offer congratulations. Mrs. Patel from apartment 4C pressed a small box of homemade sweets into her hands. "For good luck with your music studies," she said with a gentle smile. The apartment door was unlocked, unusual since her mother was strict about security. Inside, Jasmine found not just her mother and siblings, but Dr. Bennett and a camera crew setting up equipment around the piano. "What's happening?" Jasmine asked, dropping her backpack by the door. Dr. Bennett stepped forward. "Channel 7 wants to do a feature on you for their evening news. Is that okay?" Jasmine looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. "We need to show people what's possible," Yvonne said softly, "for all the kids in neighborhoods like ours who never get a chance." The news segment aired that night at 6 o'clock. The Williams family crowded around Mrs. Rodriguez's larger television downstairs to watch, along with half a dozen neighbors. Jasmine squirmed with embarrassment as her face appeared on screen, but fell silent as the story unfolded. The reporter called her a diamond discovered in the rough, highlighting how rare it was for a child without lessons to develop such advanced abilities. The segment included clips of her playing both the street piano and the newly arrived Steinman, interspersed with comments from Dr. Bennett about the importance of making music education accessible to all communities. "What we're witnessing is both inspiring and heartbreaking," Dr. Bennett said on screen. "Inspiring because of Jasmine's extraordinary gift, and heartbreaking because we have to wonder how many other talented children never get discovered." As the segment ended, the apartment erupted in applause. Mr. Rodriguez wiped his eyes unashamedly. "I always told you that music would change things," he said, patting Jasmine's shoulder. "Your father would be so proud." The following days brought a whirlwind of changes. The crowdfunding campaign surpassed $20,000, with contributions coming from as far away as Japan and Australia. Dr. Bennett helped Yvonne set up a trust for Jasmine's education and a separate account to help with family expenses. For the first time in months, Yvonne was able to quit her evening job, meaning she could be home when her children returned from school. The refrigerator stayed full. Bills were paid on time. Little Zach got the asthma medication he needed without Yvonne having to choose between that and electricity. But perhaps the biggest change was in their community. The attention on Jasmine had made people look at the West Side neighborhood differently. A reporter doing a follow-up story noticed the rundown community center and wrote about the lack of after-school programs. Within days, a local business association pledged to fund renovations and new activities, including a music program. Jasmine's first day at the prestigious Arts Academy arrived 3 weeks after Dr. Bennett discovered her playing in the rain. Yvonne had used some of the donation money to buy Jasmine proper clothes. Nothing fancy, but new jeans without patches, clean sneakers, and a purple sweater that made her dark eyes shine. "Remember, you belong there just as much as anyone," Yvonne said, straightening Jasmine's collar as they waited at the bus stop. "Your talent got you in, not charity." Jasmine nodded, though her stomach churned with nerves. "What if the other kids don't like me?" "They've probably been playing since they were babies." "Then you'll work twice as hard," her mother said firmly, "and you'll remember where you come from. People like us have to be stronger, more determined." The academy was housed in a beautiful old building with tall windows and a grand entrance. Inside, the walls were lined with photographs of famous musicians who had studied there as children. Jasmine followed signs to the weekend program office, clutching her acceptance letter like a lifeline. The receptionist smiled when she gave her name. Jasmine Williams. Professor Chen is waiting for you." First door on the right. Professor Chen was a small woman with silver-streaked hair and quick, precise movements. She shook Jasmine's hand firmly. "Dr. Bennett has told me all about you. Let's hear what you can do." The next hour was the most challenging of Jasmine's musical life. Professor Chen had her play scales she'd never attempted, identify intervals by ear and sight-read simple pieces. Jasmine struggled with reading the notes but impressed the professor with her ability to play back complex passages after hearing them just once. "Your technique needs work," Professor Chen said frankly. but your ear and your musical intuition are exceptional. We'll start with one private lesson and one theory class each weekend. You'll need to practice at least 2 hours every day." Jasmine nodded seriously. "I can do that. It won't be easy. You're starting years behind most students your age." "I don't mind working hard," Jasmine said, thinking of her mother's double shifts and aching feet. "My family works hard for everything." Professor Chen's expression softened. "Then we'll get along just fine. Now let me introduce you to some of your classmates." In the student lounge, 5 other children around Jasmine's age sat in a circle, snacking and chatting. They fell silent when Professor Chen brought Jasmine in. "Everyone, this is Jasmine Williams joining our weekend program. Jasmine, these are some of our other piano students." A tall boy with glasses spoke first. "You're the girl from the video, right? The one who taught herself Chopin?" Jasmine nodded, bracing for judgment. Instead, the boy's face lit up. "That was amazing. I've been playing for 6 years and my raindrop prelude still doesn't sound that good." "How did you learn without a teacher?" asked a girl with long braids. "I just listen," Jasmine said with a shrug. "And then I try to make the same sounds. Like playing by ear, but for classical music," another boy said, impressed. "My teacher would kill me if I tried that. She's all about proper technique." "Speaking of which," Professor Chen interrupted, "you all have lessons starting in 15 minutes. Jasmine, you're with me at 1 o'clock. As the professor left, the children invited Jasmine to sit with them. They asked about her viral video, her family, her neighborhood. Instead of the judgment or condescension she'd feared, they showed genuine curiosity and respect. "My mom says it's a miracle you play so well without training," said the girl with braids. "She says it means you were born to be a musician." Jasmine thought about this as she rode the bus home that afternoon. Born to be a musician? Was that true? Or had music simply been her way of holding on to joy when everything else seemed to be slipping away? When she got home, her siblings were waiting eagerly for stories about the academy. Even her mother had arrived home early, bringing a small cake to celebrate Jasmine's first day. "Professor Chen says I have a lot to learn," Jasmine told them as they gathered around their small kitchen table. "But she also says I have good instincts." "What does that mean?" Little Zach asked, frosting already smeared on his chin. Jasmine thought for a moment. "I think it means that sometimes your heart knows things your head hasn't learned yet." Yvonne smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Your father used to say something similar. That music isn't in the piano or even in your fingers, it's in your soul first. Everything else is just learning the language to let it out." That night, after everyone was asleep, Jasmine sat at her new piano in the darkness, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down. Tomorrow she would start the assigned exercises from Professor Chen. Tonight, though, she just wanted to feel grateful for the unexpected turn their lives had taken. From the street below came the sounds of the neighborhood, a car horn, distant music, someone laughing. The same sounds as always, but now they seemed to carry a different message. Not just survival, but possibility. 3 months flew by in a blur of lessons, practice, and homework. Jasmine's fingers were developing calluses from the hours at the piano, and her mind was filled with musical terms she'd never known existed before. Professor Chen was strict but fair, pushing Jasmine harder than she'd ever been pushed before. "Again," the professor would say, tapping her pencil against the music stand. "Your left hand is rushing. Feel the rhythm in your body, not just your fingers." Today's lesson had been particularly challenging. Professor Chen had introduced a Bach invention, a complex piece with 2 melodic lines that needed to sound independent yet harmonious. "I can't do it," Jasmine had admitted after her 5th failed attempt. "My hands want to play the same rhythm." Instead of the criticism she expected, Professor Chen had sat beside her on the bench. "When I was your age, my teacher made me practice with my eyes closed. Try it, close your eyes and listen to each hand separately." The technique worked. With her eyes closed, Jasmine could focus on the feeling of the music rather than the sight of her. Fingers stumbling over the keys. By the end of the lesson, she'd mastered the first page. Now, as she walked through the academy's grand hallway toward the exit, a poster on the bulletin board caught her eye. Bold letters announced, "National Youth Music Competition, Special Opportunity Division." A passing student noticed her interest. "They just announced it last week," he said. "It's new this year, for kids who haven't had access to traditional training but show exceptional talent." Jasmine's heart raced as she read the details. The competition would be held in just 2 months. Winners would receive scholarships and performance opportunities that could open doors to the country's top music schools. At home that evening, she hesitantly mentioned it to her mother over dinner. Professor Chen would need to nominate me, she explained, pushing her peas around her plate. And I'd need a full program, 3 pieces from different periods. Yvonne studied her daughter's face. You want to do this, don't you? Jasmine nodded. But it's probably too soon. I've only had real lessons for a few months. What does Professor Chen think? I haven't asked her yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Yvonne reached across the table to take Jasmine's hand. Remember what I told you before your first day at the academy? You belong there just as much as anyone. If you want to try for this competition, then you should. The next Saturday, Jasmine stayed after her lesson, gathering her courage as Professor Chen organized her teaching notes. Is something on your mind, Jasmine? The professor asked without looking up. The National Youth Competition, Jasmine blurted out. The special division. Do you think, could I? Professor Chen finally looked at her, expression unreadable. It would mean extra lessons. Hours of additional practice. A much more rigorous schedule than you have now. I know, Jasmine said, standing straighter. I'm willing to work for it. The professor was silent for a long moment. You've progressed faster than any student I've ever taught, she finally said. Your technique is still developing, but your musicality... She smiled slightly. That can't be taught. Does that mean you'll nominate me? It means we start preparing on Monday. I'll arrange additional lesson times. You'll need to be here every day after school, not just weekends. Every day? Jasmine's mind raced, calculating bus fare and time. I don't know if we can... Transportation has been arranged, Professor Chen interrupted. Dr. Bennett has organized a carpool with other students from your area. And before you worry about the extra lessons, they're covered by your scholarship. Jasmine bit her lip, fighting back tears of relief and gratitude. Thank you. I won't let you down. See that you don't, Professor Chen said, but her eyes were kind. Now let's discuss your program. The next weeks were the most demanding of Jasmine's young life. Her daily routine became a carefully orchestrated schedule. School from 8 to 3, piano practice from 4 to 7, homework until 9, then bed. Weekends were filled with theory classes, additional practice, and work on her competition pieces. Professor Chen had selected a challenging program, Bach's 2-part invention in F major, a Chopin nocturne, and a modern piece by a composer Jasmine had never heard of before. Each piece presented different technical and expressive challenges. The Bach shows your technical foundation, Professor Chen explained. The Chopin displays your emotional depth. And the modern piece demonstrates your versatility and ability to learn something entirely new. At home, Yvonne made sure Jasmine had nutritious meals and enough sleep, sometimes gently forcing her to take breaks when she practiced too long. Her siblings learned to play quietly during her practice time, and neighbors who once complained about noise now asked how her preparation was going. One evening, 3 weeks before the competition, Jasmine hit a wall. No matter how many times she played the difficult passage in the Chopin, her fingers tangled and the emotional flow she was trying to create fell flat. In frustration, she slammed the piano lid down, then immediately regretted it, checking for damage to the beautiful instrument on loan to her. Rough day? Her mother asked from the doorway. Jasmine hadn't realized she was being watched. I can't get it right, she admitted, wiping angry tears. Maybe I'm not ready for this competition. Yvonne sat beside her daughter on the piano bench. You remember what happened when you were learning to ride a bike? Jasmine smiled despite herself. I kept falling and getting scraped up. Dad said I was the most stubborn 5-year-old he'd ever seen. But you didn't quit. Even when your knees were bleeding, you got back on that bike. This is different. There are going to be kids at this competition who've been playing their whole lives. Kids with private teachers and expensive pianos and parents who are musicians themselves. And none of them will play like you do, Yvonne said firmly, because none of them are you. She took Jasmine's hands in hers, examining the developing calluses. These hands have your father's strength and your grandmother's grace. They know things about life that those other kids don't know yet. Jasmine leaned against her mother's shoulder. I'm scared, Mama. Good, Yvonne said, surprising her. Fear means you care. Now take a break, have some dinner, and then try again. But this time, don't think about the competition. Think about why you love this music in the first place. Later that night, after her siblings were asleep, Jasmine returned to the piano. Instead of jumping straight into her competition pieces, she played the melody she'd composed for her father. As the familiar notes filled the quiet apartment, she felt something unlock inside her, a reminder of music's power to express what words couldn't. When she returned to the Chopin, she played it differently, not trying to impress imaginary judges but telling a story with the notes. The difficult passage suddenly made sense as part of that story, and her fingers found their way. The morning of the competition arrived clear and cold. Jasmine woke before her alarm, stomach tight with nerves. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying her pieces over and over. Yvonne had taken a rare day off work to accompany her daughter. She laid out the outfit they'd chosen together, a simple but elegant blue dress from a second-hand store, carefully altered to fit perfectly. "Eat something," Yvonne urged, placing a plate of toast and eggs before Jasmine. "You'll need your strength today." Jasmine managed a few bites, then spent 10 minutes at the piano, not playing but visualizing each piece, her fingers moving silently above the keys. They took the bus to the downtown concert hall where the competition was being held. The grand building with its columns and gleaming windows seemed intimidating, but Jasmine straightened her shoulders as they approached. Inside, the lobby buzzed with activity. Dozens of young musicians clutched instrument cases and music folders, some practicing silently with fingers in the air, others sitting quietly with eyes closed. Parents hovered nearby, offering last-minute advice or adjusting clothing. Jasmine checked in at the registration table, receiving a number to pin to her dress and directions to the warm-up rooms. Professor Chen was waiting for her there. "How are you feeling?" the professor asked, helping Jasmine unpin and hang up her coat. "Nervous," Jasmine admitted. "Everyone here looks so prepared." "So are you," Professor Chen assured her. "Now 20 minutes of warm-up, then we rest your hands before your performance time." The warm-up room contained 6 upright pianos separated by portable dividers. The cacophony of different pieces being practiced simultaneously was jarring after the focused environment of Jasmine's lessons. Still, she found her focus working through technical exercises before briefly touching on difficult passages from her program. When her warm-up time ended, Professor Chen led her to a quiet corner of the waiting area. "Your mother is already seated in the hall. I'll be there too, but not where you can see me. It's better that way. Focus on the music, not on familiar faces." Jasmine nodded, trying to control her breathing. Around her, other competitors seemed impossibly poised. A girl with perfectly braided hair practiced with a digital tablet showing her score. A boy in a crisp suit consulted with an adult who appeared to be giving detailed technical advice. "They look like they belong here," Jasmine whispered. "So do you," Professor Chen said firmly. Different path, same destination. When Jasmine's number was called, she walked onto the stage with shaking legs. The concert hall was larger than she'd imagined, with hundreds of seats facing the gleaming grand piano center stage. Judges sat at a long table to one side, their expressions neutral as they made notes on their tablets. As she took her seat at the piano, adjusting the bench height, Jasmine scanned the audience, finding her mother in the 3rd row. Yvonne gave a small nod of encouragement. Jasmine placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began the Bach. The first notes were tentative, but as she progressed, muscle memory took over. She found herself enjoying the mathematical precision of the piece, the way the 2 melody lines conversed with each other. Transitioning to the Chopin, she closed her eyes briefly, remembering her father's laugh, her mother's sacrifice, the journey that had brought her to this stage. The nocturne flowed from a place deeper than technique, carrying with it all the emotions she'd experienced these past months. For the modern piece, she allowed herself to be bold, embracing its unusual harmonies and rhythmic challenges. When the final chord resonated through the hall, she felt a moment of perfect clarity. Regardless of the results, she had given her best performance. The applause surprised her. She'd been so absorbed in the music that she'd forgotten about the audience. Rising from the bench, she gave a small bow as Professor Chen had taught her, then walked off stage on legs that felt strangely light. In the wings, Professor Chen waited, her usually stern face breaking into a rare smile. "You did it," she said simply, squeezing Jasmine's shoulder. "Did I play well?" Jasmine asked, suddenly uncertain. You played like yourself, the professor replied. And that is always enough. The results wouldn't be announced until later that afternoon. Yvonne found them in the lobby, pulling Jasmine into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you, she whispered fiercely, no matter what happens next. As they waited for the judge's decision, Jasmine watched the other competitors. Some looked confident, others nervous. A few parents paced or checked their phones repeatedly. The girl with the braided hair practiced silently, fingers moving in her lap. Are you scared? A small voice asked. Jasmine turned to find a young boy, perhaps 7 or 8, looking at her with wide eyes. Yes, she admitted, but that's okay. The boy nodded seriously. I heard you play. It sounded like a story. Before Jasmine could respond, an announcement called all competitors back to the main hall for results. As she filed in with the others, she felt strangely calm. Whatever happened, the music had already given her more than she could have imagined a few months ago. The head judge, a distinguished-looking woman with silver hair, took the stage. Before we announce our winners, I want to thank every young musician who performed today. Your dedication to your art inspires us all. Jasmine held her breath as the judge began announcing names, starting with honorable mentions. When she reached the Special Opportunity Division, the room grew especially quiet. This division was created to recognize exceptional talent that has flourished despite limited access to traditional training, the judge explained. The standard was remarkably high, making our decision extremely difficult. Jasmine closed her eyes, preparing herself for disappointment. The first prize in the Special Opportunity Division goes to Jasmine Williams. The words seemed to float in the air before reaching Jasmine's ears. She sat frozen, certain she had misheard. Jasmine Williams, the judge repeated, scanning the audience. Is Jasmine present? A gentle push from Professor Chen brought Jasmine to her feet. Her legs moved automatically, carrying her toward the stage as scattered applause grew into enthusiastic clapping. The walk felt endless, the spotlight warm on her face as she climbed the short steps to join the head judge. Congratulations, young lady, the woman said, pressing a crystal trophy into Jasmine's hands. It was heavier than she expected, catching the light in dazzling patterns. Your performance showed not only technical skill, but genuine emotional understanding of the music. The jury was particularly moved by your interpretation of the Chopin. A microphone appeared before her. Would you like to say a few words? Jasmine stared out at the sea of faces. Her mother was standing now, tears streaming down her cheeks, hands clasped as if in prayer. Dr. Bennett sat nearby, beaming with pride. Professor Chen maintained her composed expression, but her eyes shone with approval. Thank you, Jasmine managed, her voice small in the vast space. I want to thank my mother who worked so hard for our family and… She paused, gathering courage. My father, who isn't here anymore, but who taught me that music is a way to speak when words aren't enough. And everyone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Later in the reception hall, Jasmine found herself surrounded by people offering congratulations. Competition officials explained the scholarship details, full tuition to the Academy's year-round program, plus a stipend for expenses. Other competitors asked about her training, seeming genuinely impressed when she explained her journey. Even parents approached her, some with business cards and mentions of future performance opportunities. Through it all, Jasmine kept glancing at her mother, who stood nearby with a plate of untouched reception food, watching her daughter with a mixture of pride and something else, perhaps amazement that this new world was opening up before them. When they finally had a moment alone, Yvonne pulled Jasmine into a tight hug. Your father is seeing this, she whispered fiercely. Wherever he is, he's watching and so proud he could burst. Jasmine nodded against her mother's shoulder, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The trophy sat between them on the bus ride home, catching the late afternoon sun. Yvonne had wrapped it in her scarf to protect it, but Jasmine kept peeking at it, still not quite believing. What happens next? She finally asked as they neared their stop. According to Dr. Bennett, there will be interviews, maybe some local performances. The scholarship paperwork needs to be completed. Yvonne smiled. But tonight, we celebrate. Their building looked different somehow as they approached. The same worn brick and narrow windows. But now it seemed like just one chapter in their story rather than the whole book. News traveled fast in their tight-knit community. By the time they reached their floor, neighbors were already gathering in the hallway. Mrs. Patel brought samosas. The Rodriguez family carried a homemade cake with congratulations written in wobbly blue icing. Even the teenage boys who usually hung around the building entrance came up, awkwardly offering a gift, a journal with music staves, for composing. Their small apartment could barely contain the impromptu celebration. Little Zach proudly showed everyone the newspaper clipping about his big sister, carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve. Layla had made a drawing of Jasmine at a giant piano with stars around her head. The visitors took turns holding the trophy, exclaiming over its weight and sparkle. In the midst of the celebration, Jasmine slipped away to the bathroom for a moment of quiet. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, the same face, but something had shifted in her eyes. The girl who had played piano on a street corner for food money was still there, but now she stood straighter, looked more directly at the world. "You did it," she whispered to herself, testing how the words felt. "You really did it." When she returned to the living room, she found Dr. Bennett had arrived carrying a large envelope. "I have news," the professor announced once everyone had settled down. The competition organizers were contacted by Channel 7. They want to do a follow-up feature on Jasmine, not just about her win, but about what it means for other children in underserved communities. Murmurs of excitement rippled through the room. And, Dr. Bennett continued, they want to broadcast a special performance, a benefit concert at Meridian Hall. Jasmine's eyes widened. Meridian Hall was the city's most prestigious concert venue, where world-famous musicians performed. "Me?" she squeaked. "At Meridian Hall?" "You and several other young musicians from similar backgrounds," Dr. Bennett explained. "The proceeds will fund music education programs in neighborhoods like this one." Yvonne stepped forward. "When would this happen?" "1 year from now," Dr. Bennett said, giving Jasmine time to prepare a full concert program with Professor Chen's guidance. That night, long after the guests had gone and her family was asleep, Jasmine sat at her piano in the darkness. She didn't play, just rested her fingers lightly on the cool keys, thinking about the jour. Nay ahead. 1 year. 1 year to transform from a competition winner to a concert pianist capable of commanding a full program at Meridian Hall. The challenge was enormous, but so was the opportunity not just for her, but for other children who might see her and realize what was possible. The next morning brought more surprises. A letter arrived from the mayor's office, inviting Jasmine to perform at an upcoming community event. Professor Chen called to discuss an intensified training schedule. A local magazine wanted to feature her in their Young Achievers section. "It's happening so fast," Jasmine said as her mother sorted through the growing pile of correspondence on their kitchen table. "This is just the beginning," Yvonne replied, a mixture of pride and concern in her voice. "Are you sure you're ready for all this?" Jasmine considered the question carefully. "I think so. As long as I can still be normal sometimes. Still be me." "That's the most important thing," her mother agreed. "Remember why you play, not for attention or awards, but because music is part of who you are." The following months brought both challenges and triumphs. Jasmine's schedule grew increasingly demanding as she balanced school, now daily music lessons, and occasional performances. There were moments of frustration when new pieces seemed impossibly difficult, times when her fingers ached and her mind rebelled against the constant discipline. But there were also breakthroughs. The exhilaration of mastering a technically challenging passage, the deep satisfaction of finding just the right expression for a phrase, the joy of creating something beautiful. Her first public performance after the competition was at a community center, in another underprivileged neighborhood. The piano was out of tune, the acoustics poor, but the audience, mostly children who had never seen classical music performed live, watched with rapt attention. Afterward, a small girl approached her shyly. "Do you think I could learn to play like that?" "Absolutely," Jasmine told her without hesitation. "If I can, you can." As the months passed, Jasmine's world expanded in ways she couldn't have imagined. She met composers who wrote pieces specifically for young performers. She attended master classes with visiting artists who treated her with the same seriousness they gave conservatory students. She even traveled to a neighboring city for a youth music festival, her first time staying in a hotel. Through it all, her mother kept her grounded, Yvonne insisted on regular family dinners, made sure Jasmine's academic work didn't suffer, and wasn't afraid to occasionally cancel a performance opportunity if she felt her daughter needed rest. "Your gift isn't going anywhere," she would say. "But your childhood only happens once." As the date for the Meridian Hall benefit concert approached, Jasmine worked with Professor Chen to select and perfect her program. They decided to include not only classical pieces, but also the composition Jasmine had written for her father, now properly notated and expanded with the professor's guidance. "It's still the most authentic thing you play," Professor Chen observed during one of their sessions. "Everything else you've learned, technique, theory, interpretation, is in service to that authenticity." The night before the concert, Jasmine couldn't sleep. She stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the neighborhood that had shaped her. In the year since her competition win, subtle changes had appeared. The community center had reopened with new programs, including music lessons. A local business had sponsored improvements to the park. Her mother had found a better job with regular hours and health benefits, partly due to connections made through the academy. These changes weren't just about Jasmine's success, they were about visibility. Her story had made people look at her community and see possibility rather than poverty. The morning of the concert dawned clear and bright. Yvonne had taken the day off to help Jasmine prepare, laying out the simple but elegant black dress they had chosen for her performance. Layla carefully polished Jasmine's shoes while Zach practiced announcing his sister's name in his most formal voice. At noon, a car arrived to take them to Meridian Hall for sound check and rehearsal. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, recognized Jasmine immediately. "My daughter started piano lessons because of you," he told her as he held the door. "She was watching TV when your story came on last year. Now she practices every day without being reminded." The grand lobby of Meridian Hall was intimidating with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Backstage, technicians adjusted lighting and sound equipment, while ushers arranged programs. The concert grand piano gleamed under the stage lights, perfectly positioned at center stage. Jasmine ran her fingers over the keys during sound check, marveling at the instrument's responsiveness and the hall's perfect acoustics. Each note seemed to float in the air before gently fading. "This is the same model played by professional concert pianists," the piano technician told her. "Quite different from what you're used to, I imagine." "It's beautiful," Jasmine agreed, "but my piano at home has its own special sound too. It's been with me through everything." As evening approached, she peeked through the curtains at the auditorium. Seats were filling rapidly. Families dressed in their best clothes, music students, community leaders, even a few celebrities who had supported the benefit. Tickets had sold out weeks in advance. In the dressing room, Jasmine sat quietly while her mother arranged her hair. Neither spoke, but their eyes met in the mirror, sharing the same thought: how far they had come from that rainy day on a street corner. A knock at the door signaled 15 minutes until showtime. Dr. Bennett entered, followed by Professor Chen and several people from the academy. "The hall is full," Dr. Bennett reported, "and we've already exceeded our fundraising goal for the Music Education Initiative. How are you feeling?" Professor Chen asked, adjusting Jasmine's collar with uncharacteristic fussiness. "Nervous," Jasmine admitted. "But ready," the professor nodded approvingly. "Remember what we discussed. The music exists whether you play it or not. Your job is simply to reveal it, not create it." The stage manager appeared at the door. "5 minutes, Miss Williams." As the others filed out, Yvonne stayed behind for one last moment with her daughter. She took Jasmine's hands in hers, examining the calluses and strong fingers that had worked so hard this past year. "Before you go out there," she said softly, "I want you to know something. Your father once told me that music was his way of speaking to God. I think tonight he'll be listening." Jasmine nodded, too moved to speak. She hugged her mother tightly, then straightened her shoulders and walked toward the stage. The applause as she entered was thunderous. Faces blurred in the bright lights as she crossed to the piano, adjusted the bench, and took a moment to center herself. In the front row, she could make out her family, mother, sister, brother, all watching with shining eyes. Jasmine placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes of her father's melody filled the grand space, carrying with them all the love, struggle, determination, and hope of their journey. From a street corner to center stage, playing for food to playing for the future of other children like her. As the music soared to the rafters of Meridian Hall, Jasmine knew this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Not just for her, but for everyone who needed to be reminded that extraordinary talent can be found in the most unexpected places, waiting only for the chance to be heard.